I'm Robert Pease, the Managing Director at Cascade Seed Fund, and looking forward to our next session here. We're going to be talking about growth, things that you don't necessarily get told as you start a company. And to help us take us through that story are two awesome co-founders of Slumberkins, Callie Oriard and Callie Christensen, that my Southern wants to pronounce differently, but I did it successfully. So thank you. So Slumberkins, and you will certainly keep me honest here, is an investment of Cascade, so I wanted to get that out of the way, and we certainly are big fans. Slumberkins is a consumer brand for childhood, emotional, and social intelligence and development. And we were blown away when we were able to meet you all and start working with you last year. Like I said, very excited to have you on the stage.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
And so, to kind of kick us off here, what I'd really like to talk a little bit about is how much you all had accomplished long before you raised money, right? So obviously this is the Ben Venture Conference. There's a lot of discussion around raising money and all those things. But let's talk about it from the entrepreneurial mindset as you decided you were going to go down this crazy path and then began to actually execute on the business. And just love to kind of hear that part of the story.
Yeah, well, Callie and I have been best friends since we were 14 years old, and we were on a maternity leave together and had been working in the schools and really saw this real epidemic of difficulty with emotional wellness in the schools, and we wanted to try to create a product that addressed that and gave the power to parents to really work on social emotional development with their children in the home. And while we were on maternity leave, we weren't business trained. We didn't really know much about bringing a product to market, but we understood what moms wanted, and we understood that there was a big problem out there. And so we taught ourselves to sew. We got a $200 initial investment from my mom.
No, it was a loan.
I had to pay her back, but she gave us $200 so that we could go down to Joann Fabric and buy some fabric. And we taught ourselves to sew and created these snuggly creatures and paired it with stories that were infused with therapeutic techniques that I had learned about and was using in family therapy into these stories that we printed on cardstock, and because we didn't know how to self-publish a book at the time, and paired them together and started selling them at first local craft fairs.
So we had this idea, but like Kelly said, we're educators by trade. We both have our master's degree in our areas. I was a special ed teacher, and Kelly's a marriage and family therapist that had worked as a school counselor. And so we knew we had this idea. We knew that the teachers were experiencing every year the behaviors in the classroom getting worse and worse and worse. And so we experienced that firsthand. And then as moms, putting the power in the parents' hands was really the key to what our product wanted to be. So we had this idea, and we did pitch a bunch of publishing houses to take these stories and bring them to life, and we got no's. And so that was our first step into self-publishing. And so, but some of the traction that we gained before raising money, we just taught ourselves to sew, sold at 3 local craft fairs up in Vancouver, and then put them on Etsy, and really drove traffic through social media. And we tapped into this niche handmade market, and we bootstrapped our way to 1.5 million before we, yeah.
We were sewing a lot of creatures. A lot of the sewing going on.
I assume you are much better sewers now.
No. We outsource that quickly to other people. That's another tip.
That's one of the first lessons of growing fast, right?
Yeah.
Outsource expertise where needed.
But I think also that it was a learning curve as we were having this traction and people were buying and our customers were coming. It was a learning curve for us. I remember talking to Robert on the phone the first time, which I felt probably wasn't a great impression now looking back. But I was like, Robert, tell me why people fundraise. This is like how it started for me, because we didn't have a lot of insight into why do you fundraise, especially with customers that were paying us and we were having a lot of cash flow in. And so it was a learning curve for us.
And I think the unique opportunity to bootstrap was that we were working part-time in the schools for a year and a half into it, so we weren't relying on the money from the business, so then we could invest it back into bigger runs of fabric to sew more, or into things that are very valuable to us today as a business, like IP, and filing trademark on our brand name, and filing design patents on our creatures, which we'll get to why that was important in a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's well said, and again, bootstrapping to that revenue level is something special. And I think as we got to know each other and talked about this, your backgrounds are very dialed in on sort of the science and the method of development. And, as we looked at this, we sort of, from a software mindset, almost looked at this as a platform, right? And this is a platform that can do lots of things. And you've had lots of opportunities to sort of expand beyond a consumer packaged good or a consumer product, right? A plush toy and a storybook, and there's a media aspect to your business, because even when we first talked and you were explaining who you were and how much revenue you had and that you'd done this and here's your margins, which are ridiculous, and you had this shopping agreement with a production house. I mean, it was literally me taking notes going through our discussion. I'm like, oh, okay. So that's why people raise money. Yeah. So as you see now, you've continued to grow, and you've got great fan base, right? You've got people that just adore what you're doing and the impact it's making on their children. Like, how do you determine what's next on that platform as you think about extending your brand and different revenue streams for the business going forward?
I think that we really consider ourselves a mission with a business or a product line to deliver that mission. So whatever vertical we're going into, we're always going to keep the heart of Slumberkins the same. And it's really to create opportunities for parents to interact, connect, and reflect with their children, to really build healthy emotional bonds at an early age.
Yeah, as we look at the different ways that we can do that, I think some of the interesting conversations that are happening now as we add on to our consumer product is, how do you use technology, how do you use entertainment in innovative ways that immerse people in experiences together and not pull them apart and tune them into technology. And so that's always at the heart of our decision making when we're thinking about going into those different verticals, and we're really excited about the stuff that we're able to work on now.
Well, so true to form to our session title here, as I warned you, I wanted to ask this question, which is two sides to the question. One is, what's the thing you thought was going to be really hard or really mysterious, and then when you did it, you're like, wow, that wasn't a big deal? And what was the thing that you weren't really expecting to see, have happen, face, or whatever it may be, that was a much bigger challenge than you thought it would be?
Something that was really a lot harder than we thought it would be the supply chain management and the logistics of inventory and producing overseas, because we were just so excited to not be sewing them ourselves anymore, or like we had a little cuddly creature ring happening in Portland for a good year and a half too. So it felt like a big relief to have someone else take over the production, but then the flip side of that is with the growth and understanding the inventory management and the supply chain ordering and lead times for your projections, which really are just your best guesses. And now we at least have, 3 years, almost 4 years of data to drive those numbers, but for a long time it was us just taking our best guess at what we think we could do.
We still come up short sometimes on that. I would say another hard piece that was a real struggle was the fundraising piece for us, because I think we had the traction, we had the customers, but we didn't really know the process. We didn't really know, the points that we would need to make to investors. I think people who, like yourself, who heard what was going on were like, oh wow, this is something great, but we didn't really know how to present it in the best way at first. And so I think just that process of gaining the confidence for yourself to say, no, I know my business, and just because you're asking me hard questions doesn't mean that I'm not good enough, or I shouldn't be here, or I don't deserve the funding. It was more just like, now I just need to learn how to play this game, and learning how to play that game was, man, it's everybody raising money. It's a tough thing. Yeah.
That's right. You learned a whole lot of skills that you didn't think were at all relevant to your business that are very important to the business, right?
Yeah, it helps being a therapist. It's a lot of emotional intelligence that you need to
So is there going to be a fundraising Slumberkin that's coming out sometime soon?
It's up next.
Everybody get through
for all the entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah. One focused on grit.
Right, exactly. Grit and determination. So you all are based in Vancouver, Washington, but there's a unique sort of Central Oregon tie-in to the start of this company, and would love to just have you all sort of tell that story, because I think it's a great one.
Sure. Well, when we were on maternity leave, hand sewing Slumberkins for the first time before we even went to our first craft fair, Callie and I decided to take a little maternity leave vacay and go and stay in Sun River with my aunt and uncle who were sitting in the crowd. And we brought our bins of Slumberkins down there, and I think probably had maybe like 50 of them ready to go. And it was just so fun to be able to sit up in her office area and really spend time, a creative moment that felt like a good break for us as moms heading back. We were actually heading back to our jobs as educators, but it was a very special moment of creativity born here in the Bend area.
Yeah, I would say the one downside of that was we worked really hard for like 3 days sewing these, because we would hand stitch them in the beginning, so it took hours. And then we decided at the end of the trip that actually the faces were all wrong and the eyes didn't look right, and so we ended up having to redo them. But that's just, part of the process. I think it's always like you work really hard and you get so invested in an idea, and then it changes all the time.
We didn't finish answering the question about what has been easier than we expected.
Go for it.
I would say one of the things that was easier than expected was sort of having a big vision and then reaching out to people that from where we started seemed like maybe this is a little bit crazy or out of reach. But once you become an entrepreneur and you're reaching out to other entrepreneurs or other mentors who have been through this journey, we've been amazed at how people respond and are willing to help. So, for example, we, like you were talking about with this shopping agreement that we had, we always had the idea that we wanted to bring our characters to life so that kids could connect with them more. So we kind of did our own little side puppet show on our own that we funded, which was pretty much a flop, but it opened the door to us meeting the president of television for the Jim Henson Company, who was really impressed with our grit and our vision to try to do that on our own. And we got in a relationship with her, and now we're down the road and we're creating a preschool television series with the Jim Henson Company for a global streaming network.
So awesome. So awesome. Because as we all learned, I'm good at question and answer. We do have time for some questions. Any questions from the audience? And I'm going to try to follow the box, or I guess I can go hands here. How about right here? Yep.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with each other, the dynamic, the fascinating one, and I've watched many start businesses together and have them implode. What is the secret sauce to the both of you? What kind of agreements have you worked out on decision making?
That's a great question. I think, for Callie and I, we have such a long history. We're pretty much like sisters, being friends since we were 14, but it kind of goes in line with our brand. We're teaching about emotional wellness and healthy relationships, and it's caused us to have to really dig deep into our own relationship and looking at, ourselves and what each of us is good at, and deferring to each other in moments of needing to do that, and knowing what we need to share to make us feel comfortable. So we're co-CEOs, and I think for us that is really important to the way that we function. It's like Slumberkins is our baby and we're the parents, and there's equal power here. And I think, again, being a therapist, it's been helpful. We're both in therapy and work through
With the same therapist?
With the same therapist, separate. We're into talking about our feelings and challenging each other and digging in. And I think whether you're into that or not, if you're with a co-founder, you're going to run into stuff where people's egos or their insecurities come up, and the way that you address those in that moment is so important in the health of a relationship that's leading a company.
I would add, it hasn't been easy. Even during the fundraising process is when it started to get weird of being across the table from a potential investor and them asking us, okay, well, cool, but which one of you is really in charge, you know? And then like having to dig into org structure and all of that and really kind of defining out what we default to each other on, and also like from a legal standpoint, having a tiebreaker in our bylaws.
But there's a lot of trust. You have to have an immense amount of trust.
Other questions? Right here.
Hi, my name is Jack, and I'm a student from Oregon State University. I'm interested in education, and I was wondering, given how families who suffer from poverty experience higher rates of disconnect between parents and the students, and how kids at those households read significantly slower, have you thought about partnering potentially with a nonprofit organization like Robin Hood Foundation, so your product could be something they incorporate in their poverty fight initiative?
Yep, we are always thinking of creative ways in how to give back. We did partner with an organization called the Office Moms and Dads out of Vancouver, which is a support network for children entering the foster care system. So a special creature we developed specifically for children in the foster care or that have been adopted, receive that entering into a foster home but on a placement. And then we're right now working on a campaign for November about providing resources in our way of our Fox creature. That is, it addresses family change, but any coping with big transition or change for children in youth homelessness situations.
All right, I'm going to go to this side. Any questions on this side? I got one in the back here.
Hey, Callie, I'm Tommy. Really cool story. When did you get to a point where you decided, okay, we have jobs and we're making money, and now we should probably quit and do this? Was there like a key moment?
Yeah, there was for us, just in our journey. So, we didn't pay ourselves at all for the first year and a half of building Slumberkins. Like Callie said, we were investing it all back into growth and into protection. But we were able to we were asked to film on Shark Tank. And so it was right in September that we were going to film, and that was when back to school time was. And so we kind of used that as our catapult to say, okay, we're going on Shark Tank. let's jump 2 feet in and really commit ourselves to that. So once we got the call that we were going on, we both called our schools and said, we're out. We're going to go full in for Slumberkins, and haven't looked back.
So I have a question. So I'm sitting up here with the microphone. Tell us about the Shark Tank experience.
Well, it was
which if you Google this, you can find it, right?
Yeah.
It's a video that's out there, yeah.
I mean, well, it was before Kelly even asked the question of why do you raise money? It was a really good learning opportunity, but it was one that, it made us really think bigger for the brand. Even filling out the application to get on Shark Tank makes you a better founder of understanding the business. Knowing how to speak to your mission and your vision and strategic plan for 3 to 5 years out, those were questions that really pushed us and brought us out of thinking about Slumberkins as more of like a handmade mommy side hustle that has a lot of traction on Instagram, to then being like, oh no, this is actually a business with a great mission that we really can take really far.
Yeah, I would say it was very nerve-wracking for all the entrepreneurs coming up here to pitch. It's a similar feeling looking out at people, but it was really scary, but and a roller coaster. It's a long process, and they tell you at any moment that they could stop talking to you and never call you again, and you've filled out a 150-page application, and you're just trying so hard. And I think at the end of the day, all the sharks were really actually very nice. They make it a lot more dramatic on TV with the music and the close-ups of their faces. It wasn't that intense when we were there, but it definitely seemed a lot more like for TV than what's going on here. This is really organic and real, and that was very much a TV
show.
Sound bites and things happening. So,
and we didn't get an offer, which felt really terrible. Yeah. And so afterwards, we really had to dig deep and say, okay, well, that was a big letdown. And actually, it was on the flight home from Shark Tank that I think we had spent the night before crying and just wallowing in it for a moment. That then on the flight home, we were still too cheap to buy Wi-Fi on flights. So then we actually ended up writing our next book and our next creature, which is Narwhal, all about growth mindset. And so it's through those moments of perceived failure that we've really been able to actually dig into some inspiration.
Been through quite a lot in a very short amount of time. We could probably have time for 2 more questions. Got one in the back here?
Yeah, hi. As a current foster youth here in Oregon, I was just wondering if, given your background here in Bend, if you were ever going to plan on partnering with groups such as Looking Glass that offer counseling services and such as those types of things to foster youth. I was just wondering if you're planning on partnering with them at all and moving into Oregon, or if you were just going to stick with where you were in Washington.
I think we're always trying to find the right organizations to partner with to reach as many children and families and people as we can. And so we do some things locally and partner with different organizations at different times based on the campaigns that are going on and our availability with inventory. But I think as we grow, we're going to be looking to do more wide-reaching national campaigns and global campaigns because with each one of our creatures really addresses different things. So we have one that's really aimed at supporting foster and adoption. We have a creature that's around mindfulness. We have relaxation, stress relief, grief and loss. So we're always looking for ways to get to as many people as we can and give tools because we know that working in the schools and in the mental health area, that it's really underserved and people are in need of tools. And there's not a lot out there in the consumer space. So
We do run an educator program that also therapists can take part in for just paying less for the product to use because we know it's expensive to buy all of your own supplies and resources for your own classroom or office.
Great. All right, got time for one more.
Hear myself, so I don't know if you can hear me. Can you? Okay. Oh gosh, all right.
Stand up, please. Yeah, thank you.
stand up.
There are a lot of stories we hear about female entrepreneurs and founders feeling like they have to bring a male into the room with them when they go to pitch or to ask for investment or to go to banks or any of these things. Did you run into any of that pushback? Did you have that feeling at any point?
We definitely, nobody said that to us. I definitely, when I think about the confidence aspect, I definitely had times where we walk out and I was like, oh, I just need a guy in here with me to have, help me answer all of these questions and make it more solid. So I think internally I felt that, but part of that journey is the confidence to say, no, I know my business, I can answer these questions. Some of these questions are really more in depth than maybe other people would get, but I'm gonna answer them well and keep going. So it's kind of balances on a confidence thing for me around that.
And I think just learning from every pitch, you always get asked different questions, and I think the two of us are we consider ourselves lifelong learners, but we're fast learners, and we have a lot of tenacity and grit to go find the answers that we know we don't know, and I actually think that served us well to know that we don't know what we don't know, and then go after it.
Yeah, that's great. I think we're about to wrap up time here. I just wanted to end with, I'm very pleased that Max Alt introduced us. My partner Julie and I, we have a process where everybody gets a conversation, and you blew me away, right, in our sort of initial conversation. And so all of the things about the terms for financings and all these other things are sort of secondary to the fact that how much you'd accomplished in such a short amount of time, right, and really doing something not only that's building a great business, but really making a difference and an impact. I think you both are amazing people. So thank you for spending the time up here.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're done.